Hello, and good morning. So I just saw the first couple people show up here, so I guess we can probably go ahead and get this thing started pretty soon. Threw it around to a couple places. So, as the title says, it's gonna be Archers versus Fusiliers this time. Anyone got any bets so far? I'm still trying to kind of get my windows set up here, so hopefully everything's showing up as it should. Alrighty. All set up. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. So thank you to anyone that showed up to this thing. So here's the deal. Here's the AI arena in a nutshell. Just started a few days ago here, but long story short, there's a lot of changes with One Vision. There's a lot of weird quirks to the AI, so always wanted to see about having them fight each other in this kind of format. So, if you haven't seen it before, basically the Let Us Cling Together remake had this multiplayer feature that, for all intents and purposes, basically everyone completely forgot about. So, here it is. So, I've been making a crap load of teams. Kind of one of the reasons for going through this on One Vision as opposed to the base game is, well, A, the balance is better, but B, the fact that it's just so much simpler to actually make builds in this. So, the first team here, we're going to have Pistols for Pandas. I have them set up with a couple different formats here, so no particular order. I like to set these up in squads of 3, so 4 different builds, ideally. However, in this case, most of them are going to have fairly similar builds, as you can see here. So the main ones here I like to call the sniper builds. These are the ones with a rifle, vest, they have gloves for increased crits, they've got gunner earrings for essentially better accuracy and damage. Looking at their skills here, most of them will have this. Due to the number of skills available to Fusiliers and Archers, they're generally going to be a lot more uniform in their skill tree, but they're going to be a lot less uniform in their actual equipment. So, for example, here, you know, they're going to all... dang, words are difficult today. They're all obviously going to have guns. They're going to have deflect, since they don't get access to parry. They're going to get a slight jump. You know, it's one tile, it's not going to make the biggest difference in the world. Field Alchemy 1, so they get stuff like Seeds, Tactician for improving their TP regen. Need to regenerate that toilet paper. They get Reflect Magic, because that's what they're extraordinarily weak to. Got Course Correction, which is still basically wall hacks. They've got Sharpshoot for critical hits, Barricades for blocking the way, and Bash for knockbacks. So instead of knockback, it's just Bash rank 1, 2, and 3, with 50, 75, and 100% odds to work, as opposed to the previous, I think it was like 20, 50, 75, 100. So yeah, all the ranks of everything have been narrowed down to something that makes a bit more sense, so you're not constantly having to go through 50 separate units and make sure that you have all of them upgraded, because let's be honest, if you've played base game, you've had that moment where you went through all of them and like a week later you're still upgrading people, so, you know, that's less than fun. So most of them are going to have a build that's pretty much the same as far as Fusilliers go. There's only one skill, I believe, that wasn't added on there, which was Counter Hit. That was the only one, because they've got essentially 11 regular skills when you're not counting in stuff like wards. So wards are something that One Vision added. It's essentially if you take the old immunities and resistances and you mash them into one skill, plus make them an active skill. So like if somebody has Stun Ward, they're immune to stuns, and they get a free move that if there's somebody stunned nearby them, they can unstun that guy. So, makes sense. So we've got these sniper builds here, like I said. Rifle, Evasion Vest, Crit Gloves, and Gunner Earring. We've got the fast ones here, with Damage Gloves, and Evasion Vest, and a Rifle. Void Ring for essentially lowering their weight by 10, so they're going to be firing faster, basically making up for the, well, kind of, you can see over here, the recovery time for rifles is pretty high. Fusiliers are very slow. So next we have the anti-mage setup here. They've got a Crucible Sallet for helping to deal with some magical crap. They've got a Seal of Wards for upping resistance as well. Typically, the Sallet is really just more for casters and stuff like that, but it seemed fitting in this case. Moving on, this is probably my favorite one for the Fusiliers. This is the gun and knife setup. These guys, they've got a pistol in one hand, they've got a parrying dagger in the other. So basically, if you've ever played RE4, or if you ever used to hate people that use this build in COD, if you ever played that, kind of embarrassed to say I ever did, but hey, you know, we got knife gun. Actually, wait, MGS3. There we go. There's a far better example of that. So they've got a Dragonette, that's basically the best handgun. They've got the Mangaush. So if they stab with this, it'll shackle a lot of the time. I think it's like 50 or 60% for chance for shackle. They don't have parry, so this parry bonus over here doesn't really matter much, but either way. Then they've got the vest and leggings. Now the scout set is basically just for moving around and stuff like that, so they get swift foot and jump, so they get one extra jump tile, they get one extra tile of movement. But as you can see over here, their evasion is just slightly under what the warriors were using last time. So I think those guys almost reached 300, these guys have like 258, 260, that kind of thing. So their stats are going to vary slightly, but that's the long story short of the Fusilier team here. So there we go. Now we're going to go ahead and go to the next one, which is Shade Provision. You need to provide all that shade. So now, the Archers had a similar thing, where since a lot of the skills got boiled down, they have a relatively limited pool as far as the kind of stuff that they can do. Oh, hello, telephone. Goodbye, telephone. I don't need a phone call right now. However, it's actually funny because these are the only two that really seem to have this problem, because it makes sense. You know, what's your job? Well, you go shoot things. Like, well, I guess there's really only so many complications I can add to that, can't I? So, let's go over their builds here. I was trying to find a particular guy, but whatever. So same as before, they've got multiple little squads here to show the different kinds of builds that you can do. I did not give them one-handed builds except for the sidearm users, just because it didn't really seem like something that was particularly necessary, since short bows and light crossbows are something that's going to be more, you know, for rogues and that sort of thing. Mostly going to be for skirmishers. These guys are here for damage. So, if you're unfamiliar with the One Vision changes, archers have been changed to far more of a plink unit. Their bows previously used to get this crazy bonus off of a lot of all their stuff. Since they scale off of strength, dex, they get a hidden bonus in the background that isn't even mentioned. Plus they had these two scores right here. So basically this is your damage that gets added after the fact. So like this can be seen as your armor penetration, this can be seen as your bonus damage after it breaks through that armor. So like you would completely not get any of this if you didn't break through their armor rating. But if their armor rating is really high, you basically would just get whatever's left over of that anyway. So their whole thing is that they got really high penetration, they got really high bonus damage, and they pretty much got all these bonuses that no other weapon in the game got. All of them had some, you know, here and there bonuses, like knives and katanas also got that hidden damage and penetration bonus, but you didn't really see a whole, you didn't see that nearly as strongly. So if you were ever wondering, you know, why is Vice over here tearing a dragon in half with a friggin' kitchen knife, then there you go. That's basically why. You got knives, bows, some katanas and stuff like that were just redonkulous on damage. So as far as builds go, same thing here. They've got their sniper build for the first one. So they've got augments added into their skill tree as well. So those will augment their weapons a little bit. So we've got the sniper setup, we've got the fast shooting setup, we've got the anti-mage setup, which was given sidearms. Sidearms are what were previously thrown weapons. And, well, they're mashed in with the blowguns and stuff like that, because there was no reason to have thrown and blowguns, and then their own weapons didn't have kill moves, but blowguns did, and the blowguns were the ones that never really did enough damage to actually get their rank up, whatever. That's its own thing. And then we have the varying types of crossbows in here as well. So we've got 3 crossbow units, 6 bow units, and 3 sidearm units. So, the only difference in armor from the other set is that there's spiked shields over on the sidearm guys because they are more likely to get hit, therefore they were given shields that reflect damage back. So the spiked shield and the shard shield are 2 that do reflect damage and reflect magic respectively. Skill-wise, they were almost all given double shot and tremendous shot, since they don't start off with their kill moves. So double shot right here for this guy. All of the sniper ones were given only double shot, so they're not wasting their points on tremendous early on. But same as before. They've got their weapon skill, they've got deflect. They're a little bit better at jumping. They've got field alchemy, they've got tactician, reflect magic. Some of them have been given max TP up because some of their moves scale. And, yeah, augment for their respective weapons, so they're going to be getting a little bit of a hidden bonus. I tried to vary up the kinds of stuff they have available. So, like, for example, this guy is a siege bow, that's a 6 to 10 range, as opposed to the usual 3 to 8 here. Siege bows can't fire past their regular vision range, but they can fire much, much farther. So those are pretty awesome. Sidearms, they do hobble and or slow, depending on what you use them. With rather. And then for the different crossbows, we've got 2 regular crossbows, and then one which I like to call a railgun. What did he call them? I think he called them bowcasters. But yeah, no, they're basically, they can only fire in a straight line, but they get the longest range in the game. So only one of those. But alright, I think I've prattled on long enough. Considering these are the simplest teams yet, I've actually gone the longest time going and yammering on about it. Sorry about that. Let's see this happen. So their first fight, since we're probably going to be doing 2 of them, is going to be on Majora Drift here. So this is the one that's going to heavily favor the gunners. Now, the mod creator already put his bet out there, that his first impression was that more than likely we're going to be... Ooh, jeez. Yeah, we're probably going to be seeing the gunners winning, was his take on it. Whoa! Okay, Barricade got upgraded. I completely missed that. I don't know when that happened, but that's awesome. They can double Barricade. Okay, I think Fusilliers might be my new favorite class out of nowhere. So, looks like they're going to barricade up. I don't know if they can shoot past the barricades. That's going to be something to find out. So Gunners will start off with a pretty massive initial range bonus. They're going to be doing a pretty drastic amount of extra damage, but again, it's the speed that's going to end up killing them here. So they're all probably going to move at once, since a lot of them are uniform. And it seems like these guys are going to favor healing as opposed to firing, though he may not be in range yet. The two siege bow units probably should be within range, though. There we go, yeah, 175 as opposed to the rifle's 200. Or 220 in this case. But they are able to fire back, so there's that. So the Gunners, although they technically have the ability to use counter hit, they are limited to their 50% damage version. Although they can technically use it, the problem is that they're making strange choices with these barricades, but whatever, we'll see how it works out. But technically you don't want them to use counter hit because they'll usually just end up going and shooting their friend in the back. So overall, less than ideal of a situation. Man, those boltcasters are awesome. As you can see, so far the archers are dropping behind a little bit in damage, but the gunners are going to have a hard time bringing a lot of their weapons to bear here. Since each... Okay, so each one actually has a 5-tile, well, 4-2 5-tile range weapon. So the sidearm users are the short rangers for the archers, the short rangers for the gunners are the parry builds there. So they're not even going to have a chance to get within range. And there we go, first kill goes to the archers. Again, as per usual, I tried to vary up their builds a little bit. I may do another one down the line, where they don't have any skills and use just the weapons, although that seems purely situational there. Also, in case you're wondering, and actually you may have noticed this up to this point, these are the exact same units. So in order to try and test this as closely as possible, I went ahead and just pretty much made them all the same guys, just with a different team. So I may end up doing that for some of the other teams too. And there we go, they've maxed out the number of barricades you can have, which looks to be 9, just like the Phalanxes. And we're down to 1 to 1. They've built themselves some nice little palisades over here, almost. Alright. There we go, gunners are getting within short range, or the pistoliers, I should say. The gunslingers. Although, seriously, that gun and knife and scout setup is exactly what I'm going to be using for the Resident Evil team when that happens. So, yeah, one of the requests that had come in a while ago was to see a Resident Evil team of some description, which one of them was just to go see how they handled a Nibbith fight. And if you're unfamiliar, they were given a kill move that basically allows them to vaporize the undead if they get a kill with it, so that might be something to see. And for that one, I actually wasn't even going to remake Nibbith, I was just going to go, nice! They just knifed the arrow out of the air. Yeah, tell me that, tell me that's not the Leon build right there. But yeah, I was gonna have those guys go and do just the regular Chapter 1 Nibbith fight, except scaled up for post-game, and just kind of see how they do. So for some of these, yeah, they're literally just gonna be an AI team fighting some story team, just because it seems more interesting that way. Alright, so far, you know what, archers are slightly edging it out here. And I think it's just because they can focus fire slightly better. So yeah, yay for firing arcs. Keep on doing that. Actually, going between vanilla and this version, one thing you really see a whole lot of... Oh, there we go, evening it up. Actually, no, wait. Is it? Yeah, no, it's even now. Nope, there we go, now it's going to the gunners. Yeah, one thing I've been noticing a lot going between the two versions is just how often you see a situation where you see more actual units getting involved in fights in one vision. Like yesterday, well, not even just yesterday, but several times I've still been doing that Iron Man of the base game, and you see this this constant thing going on where you have one weak unit and they just will not leave that guy alone. It's like, dude, Just let this poor bastard go and talk to that fairy over there so I can recruit them. Like, I was just having a rogue go and try to recruit a frickin' fairy for, like, an hour. Because every time they would get up, the entire team just was like, no, murder that one guy! And there's so many more threatening things. So that's, yeah. That was a bit annoying when that kept happening. Now, the funny part about that, though, with OV, the way that a lot of the armor was redone and things like that, they have a lot more things to consider, so you see a lot more varied units getting shot at. The AI still functions the same, that they want to go for specific things, but, you know, you still end up seeing a lot more of it. So, like, they're going and they're taking more shots of opportunity instead of putting themselves right in the open to go pick on one poor bastard that just can't have a nice day. Which is always nice. Actually, I should probably have checked if there's anything in chat at this point. No. I mean, of course, there's not going to be a whole lot of people showing up to this sort of thing. But hey, you know, this is the first test. I just wanted to see if it would run properly. See if there's any sorts of problems to consider. But, yeah. If you have any suggestions or anything that you would like to see differently, just let me know. And I'll make that happen. In case you're unfamiliar with this format, by the way. Oh, and by the way, if anyone happens to see this from the AC side of things, this was actually originally supposed to be the quad tournament. And then I realized I screwed up Cow's team again, and I'm gonna end up redoing that another time. Also, wow. Sidearms and double shot are amazing. Okay, so... what was I getting at here? Oh, so the format for this whole thing, in case you're unfamiliar, they do get their kill moves and stuff like that, but they get them over time. So the XP rate is 32 times the norm. Thank you to Mr. Rakes for making that code happen. But yeah, this is mostly so that they actually use some of the regular skills instead of going and getting a shot off and then just deciding, hey, I want to use Fata Morgana here, you know, 40 trillion times in a row. Because that stuff just... let's just say that kind of stuff is not terribly fun to watch. That's when I was going and messing around with base game and things like that. It kept running into the same things of like, okay, they're always gonna gang pile on the weaker unit. They're always gonna go and spam that one exact move over and over. Which right now, the reason that they're doing it, I believe Fata Morgana has one extra range, is why they keep doing it. So it's gonna have slightly more appeal to them. Okay, this is actually... you know what, I need to check the numbers. This is turning into a wholesale slaughter here. So we've got 4 archers still standing and 6 gunners still standing. With those gunners, looks like we got 3 at full health. With the archers, we have also 3 at full health. So if this guy hadn't survived with 10 health, this would actually be a very different fight right now. Although he did accidentally just off himself. Oh, and interestingly enough, Reflect Magic appears to... no, I need to check what Bernard does. Oh no, wait, never mind. He actually was not reflecting magic with that, he was using his shard... or not shard shield. What was it? Shield with the spikes. The spike shield. Derp. Spiky thing has spikes on it, who knew? Apparently not I. Ooh. Holy crap. Found out a relative is in the hospital. Oof. Huh. I should probably let her know that that thing's not a sword. I mean, hell, she can't even use swords. She can use daggers, she can use parrying daggers. Oof. Man, I absolutely love double shot with sidearms right now. Completely amazing. You know, there's a pretty solid chance for the archers still. Like, they're actually pulling it together in a little bit. Like, especially if they keep double shotting here, and as long as these guys keep using kill moves, it's still possible for them. It's basically a 4-on-3 right now. And they keep targeting all the ones with high health, it seems. Just because those are the ones that are within their range. The Reflect seem to be doing a fair bit. Yes, yes, all you guys talking about your swords that you don't like using. Jeez. And welcome to number 3 that showed up here. That's actually legit more than I was expecting. Cause yeah, let's be honest, early morning... Oh my god, they actually might do this. You know, early morning, friggin' game that no one's heard of, with a mod that fewer people have heard of. Yeah, there's not gonna be huge crowds coming to this, is there? But, okay, we're gonna go and get a little bit of revenge here. There's Silverado, that's that, cheapo kill move I was talking about. It's basically they spend 20 TP to have the ability to exercise with their shot. And that doesn't mean that they go and they bench press their gun over and over. I mean, they basically go and they, if they end up shooting a zombie with it and it kills that zombie is now vaporized. That should be really useful if you ever want to go grinding for zombies and crap. Actually, gunners, if you ended up missing it earlier, it seems like gunners also have a pretty huge advantage in that barricade now does 2 tiles instead of 1. Which is way better. Shot. Alright, let's see. Am I missing somebody? Or, yeah, no, it's 3 on 2. I actually managed to turn this around. Out of curiosity, what builds are currently left? It feels like this would be a complete chaos that I doubt the builds mattered much. Okay, so we've got this guy with the sniper build, we've got this guy with a sidearm build, this one with a sidearm build, so they might have just been surviving barely because of that. We've got one of the anti-mage builds, and we've got one of the dagger pistol builds. So, Alright. Because yeah, the pistol build, I can absolutely see blocking some arrows. They already did once. I mean, their evasion is very high. Okay, there's another one down. 2 on 2. Let's just come down to turn order. Oh! Never mind, that crit just decided it, I think. Because now, even if she moves, she's already slowed, so she might get one of them, but they're going to finish her off. So dang. I think we're going to do a second round in a different setting to see how it goes. So she's going to Silverado that guy. Yes, yes, I know, you're all bleeding out all over the place. Not a whole lot I can do about that. Alright, now he's gonna finish her. Lloyd! You just threw the fight, you douchebag! Actually, she's slow and... well, she's extraordinarily slow. He might actually double turn her. What are you gonna do? Oh, nope. Lloyd, you dick! You threw the fight! Oh man, that's awesome. Okay. So that's the first one. Go into the gunners just barely. Like, I'm loving how close these are, because you know what? If you ever wondered how friggin' good Race was at balancing stuff, like, look at this. Man, what the crap. Okay, so, now we're gonna go fight at the port. So, move on here. By the way, if I'm sure you would have seen this before, but if you're wondering about the what am I saying here? The scores, the little number scores there. In case you haven't seen one of these before, yeah, those don't friggin' matter whatsoever. They're just they're counting a bunch of stuff that's really bizarre from base game. All right. Oh, sorry, just texting my wife real quick here, but yeah, the what's it? Yeah, those scores, right? So they're downright bizarre because, like, in base game, I could never really figure out what their deal was. It seems like they were calculating up base stats. I can only assume it's calculating up base stats because nothing else made sense. Like, for example, right? I have one guy that uses Fortify. They take off Fortify, and it's a 50-point difference, because the very first draft I was thinking of doing for this whole thing, I think the gunners might have just screwed themselves by removing one of their pathways. I figured this map was the most beneficial to archers, because of how stuff comes out, but we'll see. So, you know, for a while there I was figuring, you know, okay, they must have balanced this point system. And, oh, by the way, Exile, yeah, no, I don't know if they went full retard as much as they went full coward. They're like, no, I gotta slap a band-aid on myself, and then they threw the fight. Man, that was embarrassing. That was... you know what, honestly, I want to call that a tie, because that was a special kind of special. Okay, so it appears that units with barricade maybe should not be used on this map, because they might be completely locking themselves off there. But alright. Oh yeah, this map is super douchey. Like, this is only good for AI fights and nothing else. I kid you not, I ended up restarting this fight, I want to say like 7 different times when I was doing my evaluation run for One Vision, and it just would, like, nothing works on this map. Like, you just get stuck behind little tiny buildings and that's it. And that's kind of why I picked this as the challenge map for the archers, because they get a huge benefit here. Absolutely no one else does. You'd think gunners with course correction that they would just go and, you know, shoot around all obstacles and all that, and even in base game, their range is slightly too short. So they'll, it's like they made the buildings to be exactly just enough range that their wall hacks don't even matter here. There was this annoying thing where all their leader would have to do is move 3 tiles away, and it's like, yep, there you go, fight's unwinnable now, good luck. So, I don't know what they were thinking with this map. Actually, this and one of the Crystal Cave maps are, or I guess Pirate's Graveyard. I like to call it Crystal Cave, because I think one of the maps there is called Crystal Cave. But still, they wanted to do this whole verticality thing, and dude, that does not work in an isometric view. And they knew that for base game. I don't know why they decided to try all this new stuff for the remake that, okay, there was a lot of stuff they tried for the remake that didn't quite pan out, but you could tell that, you know, their heart was in the right place, but they didn't have time to test it or implement it properly. Like, one really good example of that is one of the shaman's abilities. Like, okay, they have the ability to look at the weather. You know how everybody else looks at the weather? Like, let's let them take their turn right here, speed it up a little bit. You hit square, you hit sideways, and you see that it's sunny. You see that there's no element showing up on the right side, meaning that there's nothing that's ranking a 5 currently, I believe is how it works. So it basically assigns each element a little rating on this little sliding scale over what does better that day. So if you've ever wondered, like, hey, that thing does like 5 more damage for some reason, and you couldn't figure out why, that's basically why. Oh, by the way, the overhead view, I probably should have mentioned this earlier. If you turn off Simulate Block Transfer Effects, then... oh yeah, this is definitely going to the archers. Well, oftentimes it will. A lot of times Simulate Block Transfer Effects actually helps a lot with the lag on emulators when you do the overhead view. This is mostly a PPSSPP problem, and really only comes up whenever you're recording stuff. So it's weirdly specific that I should probably even mention that, but hey. But yeah, so they use that ability, right? And it basically spends a fair bit of their points, spends a fair bit of their recovery time, and then they can look at it, it's like, okay, I basically now know that the cold weather is helping out the ice slightly. Sure glad I wasted one of my skill slots for that ability. Like, what's the point? So that ended up changing to their weather changing ability. So, like, in One Vision, instead the shamans do this whole thing where they can, like, for example, they can make the entire map rain, and then they give accuracy debuffs to all ranged units. I think it was like Misstep or whatever it was. That they end up having a chance, I think it's like a 10-something% chance to hit that on every unit in the map, or every enemy unit on the map. And it's so much cooler because they're like, hey, look, here's this master of the elements. Yeah, they're calling down, you know, weather stuff and whatever, and it's not game-breaking or anything, it's like 10%, but it changes the weather, and it does this whole cool effect, and it has a chance to mess with people's accuracy. And that's all you need, you know? It's still balanced while still being really cool for what they are. As opposed to, you know, let me go lick my finger, put it up in the air, yep, that's an ability. Or no, probably the best one, I should say, was Warren's. So yeah, if you don't know, you can get Warren. It's a bit of a long story, but you can save him through some shenanigans. But you get Warren, and then, like, he does this thing where he can look at somebody and know how many points they've earned. Which has no gameplay benefit whatsoever. It has no possible way of having a gameplay benefit. Like, there's just nothing there. You have no possible reason to ever need to know how many points somebody has. Just because, okay. From what, if I remember this correctly, the thing literally just says, like, oh, they've earned X amount of, like, skill points. And, what's that gonna do for you, exactly? Is that gonna change your strategy at all? I knew that guy earned friggin' tremendous shot, like, 4 years ago when I started this save file. He had 60 at that point, or no, I think it was like 120 for that one. Like, and at this point he has like 90 friggin' billion, and what? Why did I buy this ability again? So, it was a weird one. But hey, what can you do? It's like, seriously, the running theme was always just like, we have 50 billion pages of design documents of cool crap that Matsuno wanted in here, and then we got around to like 100 of them? And let's be honest, this game is crazy long and has a pretty amazing amount of content in there. Like, literally, like, hands down, as far as strategy games go, I have never seen a game with this much stuff. Like, for the longest time, FFTA 2 held that spot for me, because I played that thing for like 3 years straight until I finally actually beat the thing. Because it had such a crazy amount of side content that it seemed like one of those never-ending games. Because oftentimes people played through the main plot of that thing and like, yeah, that was pretty weak, and then they threw it aside, and then the post-game is like this whole other thing. Like, literally, it's one of those ones that you play through the entire thing just so you can get to the awesome post-game stuff. Which I guess is not a very good advertisement for something, but hey, it was cool. So, yeah, I think it's safe to say the archers are doing kind of okay on this map. Just a little bit here. Little tiny bit. Yeah. They're doing very solidly. I think we might end up just doing a tiebreaker on the other map just to see that pan out again. Man, I love that gun and knife build so friggin' much. Oh, so Kisk, as far as the archer range goes, so he's asking if archers can shoot farther than the regular range in one vision. Kind of. So, there's two different types of bows. Essentially, the crafting system has been changed so that you have your standard bows are basically as good as... You don't need to craft a weapon in order for it to not suck. So, if you've got a weapon, it's going to be good. But basically, there's two flavors of bows. So, your standard bow looks like this, 3 to 8 range, standard firing arc, and you can fire beyond its range if you have an elevation advantage. And then we have a few of them here, which are siege bows, which I think will show here. No, it just shows bow type in general. But you've got 6 to 10 range, so you've got 2 extra tiles of range, but they've also got a lot more vertical forgiveness. So basically, these are the ones for shooting up and shooting really far. So these ones will end up giving you slightly more power, slightly more range, but they can't fire beyond their range. They can't fire at close range, they can't fire at super long range, but they're basically like the ultimate support bow. So, they're kind of situational, it's just whichever one you want to use, so I used a mix of all of them here. And crossbows have a similar thing here, where the standard ones are 2 to 9, whereas the side-graded ones have 14 range, but they can only fire in one direction. So, there we go. Yeah, all of your side grades are actual side grades, like they're just like new crap. And yeah, so crafting system base game was interesting. They wanted to copy Monster Hunter. That was one of those features that was like, we want to have the Monster Hunter system, but we don't understand the context of the Monster Hunter system. So pretty much what it was, like, they saw Monster Hunter, they're like, okay, we need a chance to fail on all of this, which mostly just gets on the nerves of people doing an Iron Man run, which is, you know, it's weird because the entire game feels balanced for an Iron Man run, but it won't, it like actively kicks you in the dick for doing it. Now, what I mean by this, Like, say you friggin' find yourself a Volcadius, right? You went through the Palace of the Dead, you got this rare drop, and then you get back and they're like, hey, you can have a version of this that's better. You know how that current one is, like, average at best? You can have one that's, you know, it's got slightly longer range, and you've got better usability on it, and you've got all this cool stuff. You've got a 31% chance of succeeding! I hope you actually have the ability to load, because if you're doing an Iron Man one, here's a nice middle finger for you. But yeah, that's kind of why I've been playing it that way. It's, you know, it's weirdly, interestingly balanced for not being able to load whatsoever. That's obviously what they balanced it for, so if you ever want to do a base game run, you ever, you know, you think, hey, this is easy as crap if I actually use all the features here, because let's be honest, Chariot is just straight up cheating. You know, it's there. Like, it works for that. Eventually your characters will become strong enough that their equipment doesn't matter as much, and, you know, it's possible. Like, right now, I'm kind of getting into all the post-game stuff on that save file. Only had a couple losses. Actually, no, wait, not a couple losses. I think I've had 5 casualties up to that point. That's a bit more than a couple. Which is funny, because almost all of them were on the same map in Farampa Weldwood one time. Because 4 guys in a row ended up getting punted into that friggin' volcano map, just right into the center of it. So there was this archer with knockback, and it just literally just killed off 4 guys in a row. Like, every time you get a turn, like, oh, you're going in the cliff too! And yeah, off they go. But that'll happen. The cliffs were like the main thing that actually killed off units in base game. Did it died? Oh, successfully connected. There we go. It's alive again. Alright, let's look at the numbers. Okay, we got 2. We got Miss Temperance here and Mr. Cuthbert. With literally the same 2 that ended up surviving this far. Alright, so he's gonna get himself back in business. But yeah, so if you want a comparison between Iron Man runs, right? So my first One Vision Iron Man run actually ended up dying a couple of months ago. Funnily enough, because I pulled a real idiot move on a really... okay, so obviously you need to kill off zombies and stuff with exorcisms. Well, I completely forgot that one of the maps had zombies on it. And I was going and just basically grinding up a bunch of units while just discussing stuff. Or no, I was trying to pick up Sherry, so I was going to change the weather. So I brought a bunch of units I was just going to grind up, and the rule set of that one was no running away. So pretty much was stuck in a fight that was functionally unwinnable. But anyway, let's see. Oh, we got a 4th guy too! Hello, 4th guy! This is 4 times more than I was expecting. So, a little recap of the fight up to this point. First fight was in Majura Drift. It wound up being an absolute tie. Up until Mr. Lloyd on the Archer team basically threw the fight by using a Mend Leaf on himself instead of finishing off the gunners. And so she took that opportunity to come back and just shoot him in the face. She literally just like ran up to him, just bang. So, you know, the last gunner got him. There's essentially 4 teams on each of these teams. 4 little squads just representing different builds. We've got just like the damage and crit kind of build. You got the anti-mage, you got the short range, and you got the speed shooter. These are using the exact same generics on each side, and they've each got all but maybe a couple of their abilities. There we go. So this is the second one in which it's gone very strongly to the archers just because, you know, this map is made for them. Aw. Number 4 went bye-bye. Well, that's a shame. That is a dang shame right there. Oh well. So, final match. So, any bets? We're gonna go for that same Majura Drift map again. So any bets? Is Lloyd gonna throw the fight again? Are just the archers gonna end up using all their double shots like crazy? Who knows? Who knows? Probably someone. I mean, I think Rake's pretty much called it on Gunners are supposed to win that first one. Because his bet for two different ones were Dragons vs. Fairies and, yeah, let's see. Dragons vs. Fairies, which is publishing out tomorrow, and then Gunners vs. Archers, and his gut impression was that Dragons would eat the Fairies, and the Gunners would beat the Archers, because, again, the Gunners have more general purpose damage. The Archers can do more, it's just really situational. Also, I can't say these barricades are helping him much, but dang, it looks cool. If you're unfamiliar, by the way. Oh, Lloyd will probably die off early? Okay. We'll keep an eye on Lloyd and see what he's up to. Funny part is, on this, by the way, these maps, the whole multiplayer feature of this was supposed to be you build an AI team of your own guys, and then you send those guys to somebody online. Which is a shame, though, we couldn't get the online working, because I would have loved to see some people's, like, super meta teams or something. So, what was I getting at here? Oh yeah. So, unfortunately, that old feature's gone now, but if you end up setting all your units to AI while you're on a single-player campaign, it'll actually end up going and carrying that over. So, that way I don't have to go and set their AI every single friggin' time. Although the messed up part is, if you're loading them up into making an AI team, it'll create a situation where you have to go and redo all of their AIs, because it doesn't save that information for when it would actually be useful. Who knows why? It's strange. Oh well. You know what? Such is life. There were a lot of strange things done, but this is an outright amazing game. Like, both versions of it are just... I don't know, I can't believe that they actually got the funding to do just a project as ambitious as this thing was. And it really sucks that when people think of the genre, they think of, like, FFT instead of this. It's like, both versions of it, really, are just so much better in so many ways. Now, okay, granted, FFT is simpler, don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore that game, too. It's the one that started me on the genre, but... like, dude, there's so much stuff in this. Favorite thing about the game and series is the lore? Yeah, definitely. Like, there's so much stuff. Actually, a crazy thing I found out the other day from, I think it was Kane that was posting this on One Vision's thing. So FFT was actually supposed to be Episode 8 of Ogre Battle, in theory. So, if you're unfamiliar, there's actually supposed to be 8 episodes to the thing. Actually, possibly 9. I don't think we ever got 1 or 2 or whatever. But at the moment, the way it goes is you have Knight of Lotus, which is about Lance going and essentially becoming who he becomes. So there's an optional ending for that one to just completely derail the entire series, which is personally my favorite ending, but whatever. So you got Knight of Lotus at the start, then you got March of the Black Queen, which happens somewhere around the same time, in which it's basically how Zenobia is formed. You got Person of Lordly Caliber, which happens... alongside that, which is how, I forget, it's how one of the other ones is formed. I actually haven't gone through Person of Lordly Caliber. I was going to do that one after the March of the Black Queen run. Because, actually, I never really got into Ogre Battle up until a few years ago, and oh my god, those games are so good! It's basically like, if you take Fire Emblem, make it real-time, and then add, like, a card battle system to it, kind of. We've got, like, these little squads of... They've technically got up to 8 slots, but you can have up to 5 units per squad. And then they all automatically fight each other, but at any point you can basically interrupt them with cards that do all kinds of crap. So, like, hey, you know, you get a lover's card, you throw that out there. Like, you get a card for liberating a city, right? Then you take that, and then you throw that card out there, and suddenly you got Charm on a bunch of those guys, and your squad is a much easier time. So you're basically just messing with the odds of each of these fights and positioning all of them. They're all moving in real time, and they're all doing all kinds of cool combos. Like, with Person of Lordly Caliber, there was a really cool one that Vale was telling me about. That it's like, if you run into a zombie, right, and you have a mage shoot a fireball at them, they burn away and they become a skeleton. Like, what is that? It's like they evolve into a skeleton by getting shot with fire. Or if they're... like a zombie and they're hit with lightning and fire at the same time, they turn into a ghost just because they got vaporized, or there were a bunch of those. Or no. If you have a what's it? Either a stone or an iron golem or something, and they're hit with like ice and lightning at the same time or something, it evolves them into a Balder, or I think something like that. But yeah, so yeah, it's kind of a whole series story there, like you mentioned there. So you've got KOL, what's it? Basically, all 4 of these other games, they're all setting up for Episode 8, more or less. Because, as I understand it, so KOL sets up Ovis and all of that. You've got Lucht setting up Valeria. You've got March of the Black Queen setting up Zenobia, and then you've got Personal Lord of the Caliber setting up whatever that one was. And then they were all supposed to go for Episode 8, in which apparently, like, the Chaos Gates are opened up, and it's just, like, friggin' apparently Tristan, who's the head of Zenobia there, like, he gets assassinated or something, and they start falling apart, and then supposedly at some point in there, you know, Valeria gets involved. It's just like the heads of all these different armies are coming together to stop this apocalyptic event. And, oh, was Platinus? There we go. So yeah, apparently there was a drafted document for Episode 8, and it was just this whole cool thing, like, all these groups are coming together to try and deal with the second Ogre War breaking out, which is kind of this like, apocalyptic event of, like, yeah, somebody friggin' opened up the Hellgates again. So it's funny, because they had an actual explanation for why each of these games end with a Chaos Gate opening. Because they're like, yeah, no, we're literally all trying to stop this crap from happening, and somebody's trying to keep pulling that back all the time. But yeah, so it's supposed to be this big apocalyptic thing, and from what I understand, like, Mitsuno was working on this thing, they're like, yeah, why don't you do, like, 5% of that, and tone it down like crazy, and then just, you know, kinda make it into FFT instead? So he did. So he took the plans for a skill system and put it in there. The idea was they were supposed to use the Zodiacs to basically go and fight all of the ogres and crap, which is... so it ended up just turning into the Zodiac Brave story instead. So yeah, they were supposed to use like a mix of all the Zodiacs and all the chariot stuff, and you know, it was supposed to be this whole big, we're bringing in all the constellations to go fight this crazy hell war and whatever. And so it was a bit too ambitious, as I understand it. I don't know if... well, they said that the series will continue, but let's be honest. The only place the series is continuing these days is with FF14. If you're unaware, they basically have been borrowing... I know I say basically a lot, by the way, I apologize. But they've been borrowing stuff from TO for a long time. It's got the Palace of the Dead in there, it's got a lot of the costumes. Like, I know the Terror Knights, let's see, Terror Knights, regular Knights, I believe are already in there, just because it's such a generic thing. I would assume the Archer costume, because it's kind of iconic. They've got Lanz's, both Lanz's costumes. Kashua's Dark Priestess costume, and I know there's another one. Positive there's another one, but either way, they have a lot of stuff from TO in there. It goes by different names, but, you know, when you combine all the different bits, it's all there. Okay. Yeah, you weren't being terribly careful. Jeez, sorry, just finding out about a relative here. We got... Asnamine got a bacterial thing. Hopefully it's all gonna work out there. Alright, so what is this fustercluck of remaining units? Because they appear to have gotten weirdly realistic here with all of the bodies all over the place. They've got 3 archers and 4 gunners again. By the way, you were saying about Lloyd dying early. Apparently this stubborn douche refuses to die. So just here with 1 health, like, no, it's fine. Now he wants to throw. He's at 1 health. Now he wants to, like, just go and actually fight things. Last time he was at much higher health and could have won the fight. Like, no, it's fine. Just give him a chance. So, if you were wondering by any chance how this fight would have gone in base game, Archers, like, without any question. Odds are most of the gunners would have died before they even got half the team. Because, yeah, obviously, I mentioned this earlier, but archers got they got this perfect storm of every single possible bonus that they could possibly get for their weapons. Yeah, two-handed bows, they get an accuracy bonus, they get 2 damage, well, potentially 3 or 4 damage bonuses, depending on the situation. Plus their range, plus the fact that they get some of the most overpowered kill moves in the game. Because, yeah, friggin' damage scaling and charm, what is that? Like, yeah, it's gonna be murdered down to 1 health, and they're gonna join your team. That's balanced. Which, I mean, I guess it's still better than what they did with the crossbow, where they're like, yeah, no, it's just gonna damage scale for a triple hit. Your crossbow just turned into a Gatling gun. Oh, actually, interesting thing, by the way. So, I was thinking about this earlier, because I've been watching this SNES run. Oh, there we go. So the gunners actually handily won it this time. So, what do you guys think? You want to see the gunners versus one of the other teams? Gonna go with the first comment that comes in, probably. Because there's a grand total of all 4 people's. Okay, so, yeah, the gunners... Actually, you want to see gunners versus Terror Knights? Alright, sounds good, because, yeah, I've got, like, 40 minutes here, so that should be enough for another one. Yeah, let's do gunners versus TKs. Danger zone! Alright, do this thing. Italio in his danger zone. But yeah, so, I was thinking, you know what, this remake is actually... Actually, wait a minute, I probably should have done the other map, huh? This is fine. This is fine. Both will function better on this map anyway. The danger zone map is the, what's it time? The castle with all the tar pits on it. So it's, yeah, a little bit of a thing there. But, okay, I was just thinking, so I've been watching that SNES run, right? Also, this one's gonna lose their turn. I forgot that I didn't set that up for AI. Actually, no, wait, let's do this. Put an interrupt right here. Ignore that little visual glitch in the background. You saw nothing. Put these up for melee, because I forgot to do that. But I've been thinking, they're basically alternate, slightly alternate universes. So, minor spoilers, I guess, for a character that really didn't have a whole lot of plot. At least no active plot. So that would be Mr. King Roderick, as in the guy that lost to Dorgaloa in the intro. Now, in the SNES version, if you go to Palace of the Dead, it's essentially a randomized dungeon. You've got a few different maps that can be used, but you're basically going to get 5 units that spawn in every time you send in your 8 guys and curb stomp the ever-loving Christ out of them. Now, you had a whole list of different encounters that could happen, like you had your Wind God weapon guys, that there were 4 possible encounters that would show up with them, so you could get all of your Wind God weapons in one run, potentially. Which they really, really, really severely douched over in the remake, but we'll get to that. So, you went in, and every time it rolled a new layout for you. So, like, let's say you go to a floor, and they're like, okay, you know, you fight the friggin' dragon that's holding Euros now. And you fight it, and you get Euros, and then you go and you do some random encounters, and then there's a chance you ran into the Ghost of Roderick. So that guy would give a kill move to one of your guys. He would just basically say, okay, you know, here's this cool move, and people that use these specific weapons can use it, and nobody else. So who should I teach this thing to? And then you go and, you know, you pick a guy, just like you would pick the kill moves in Knight of Lotus, except there were 10 of them in this case. All working in different ways. Like, for example, one of them was literally just like however much damage you took, you can inflict on the other guy, or another one that's just scaling with dex, which he gave to Haberim with his absurdly high dex, so now he just basically shoots a laser sword that just vaporizes anything. But what was interesting is, I was just thinking about Roderick's role in both versions, because in this one, he's literally just a boss. He's just a guy that shows up, you hear about him doing stuff, and then you find him as the other corrupted king at the bottom of a Chaos Gate, right? It's not really a spoiler, it's just what else are you going to find down there. He's basically in the same place, he's just a few rooms over. But every unit in the game already has kill moves available to them. which made me wonder, because he's saying in the SNES version that they were like this family thing that was passed down, and it was just like all of his units were trained to use them. And, you know, it was just their thing. They discovered all this stuff. So it made me wonder, you know, did he survive a little bit longer and just share that information with everybody, or did they capture some of his soldiers and get and evolve some of these kill moves, and that's why everybody has them? Like, was there supposed to be a little bit more lore behind that? Because his whole thing is just, he was going and he was finding all these crazy ancient super weapons and crap because he couldn't win the fight normally. So when you run into a few deserts and things like that, the whole backstory behind them is just, he just came in with the Apocrypha stuff and completely leveled the map. Which, he must have really sucked at using those things, because usually they're like a 9-tile area that you can get those abilities. And you just basically destroy a 9-tile area. It's a big boom and whatever, but it typically just grows right back. It would have been kind of nuts if those particular things had left their effects permanently. I know it probably wouldn't have been possible, but I somehow have a feeling that they were thinking about it. Like, you go back to a map, you know, 20 fights later, and they're like, oh, you know, there's a giant ice block over here, or there's a giant tornado hole over here, and the friggin' meteor crashed over here. That'd be... man, it'd be nuts. But unfortunately, we never will get to see that version, because it would be kind of insane. But okay, so, kind of just made me wonder, you know. Maybe that's the story there. So, I have to say, so far the Gunners are actually doing a lot better than I would have expected. Because, don't get me wrong, the Gunners are really good, but I wasn't expecting this good. But yeah, in base game, they weren't terribly good. Literally every review I saw of the Fusilier in base game was just, hey, they're like a sucky version of the Archer that's balanced. And that was it. They're like, they can only shoot straight, except for those times they can shoot through walls, but they can't shoot through barricades. That was one of those things that was probably a design oversight. But the funny thing is, if you use course correction, it will shoot through enemy units, it will shoot through walls, it will shoot through dang near anything, except not a barricade. Their ability is, one of their abilities is to put down barricades everywhere. So they put down the one thing they can't shoot through. So I don't know what happened there. I mean, odds are it probably was not meant to work that way. Actually, I think course correction might have potentially still hit other units, and I'm pretty sure it hit trees too. It just could shoot through anything that didn't technically have a health bar. But that was the thing, they were really inconsistent, and they really didn't tell you what a lot of those things did. Like, for example, with crossbows, if you ended up using Brimstone Hail, it would ignore all terrain and just blow up, you know, in a friggin' grenade explosion. If you used Dullbind, it needed direct line of sight in order to work. It didn't mention this anywhere, but it led to a lot of people really hating Dullbind because they would go and use it, expecting it to work like the first kill move, but it didn't. And really what they should have done is, and actually Rakes found a much better way of doing this, but, old Nobunaga versus the Takeda? Yeah, very possibly. Very possibly, because yeah, no, they had a lot of, they had a hell of a lot of, weird tactics in Japan. Like, you know what? I have to say, Japanese, like, friggin' in and around the Sengoku period and all of that stuff is really fun to read about, because it feels seriously like they skipped part of the tech tree and just, like, went from spears to guns immediately, and they just, like, skipped a lot of the evolution in between, whereas Europe was going, like, yeah, we went and we fixed all these little details with plate armor, and we went and we took the spear and we turned it into a poleaxe and a halberd and a glaive and a Volge and a friggin' bill, and like we made 50 billion versions of it. And then in Japan they're like, okay, we made the Yari, we're gonna go ahead and put a longer friggin' blade on it, we're gonna, you know, do some cool stuff with that, maybe use it for and against cavalry, and now guns. We're just gonna go jump to gun tech now. So it's just always fun to read about. But yeah, they did a lot of cool stuff. I actually got corrected not too long ago that yeah, I was actually wrong on the whole wood backing up metal thing. That was actually kind of this niche thing that didn't quite work out as expected. But they did have lamellar. That's what I was thinking of. It wasn't wood. It was basically hard steel and soft steel that's kind of sandwiched together to make this sort of, I guess, kind of reflecty metal of sorts. Let's see. Improved upon guns before Europe at the time too, because they standardized bore sizes. Very true. And yeah, so they did pike and rifle before anyone else. Like they did barricades and pikes and rifles, and it was an interesting time. Actually, man, there's this one thing I was reading about where they got really confident with all the rifles and everything. So during the Korean-Japanese War, it was bizarre to read about them trying to figure out all these new technologies and everything, because they're like, oh, you know, we have rifles, and then Korea's like, well, we don't have those, but we have bombs, and we can also make machine guns out of crossbows, and so they did that. So, like, I forget the name of the pass right now, but there was this crazy story of just, like, a bunch of riflemen and samurai and crap trying to take this pass, and they're just there with these, what are they called? I think they just called them fire carts. It was literally just like this block with like 100 arrows in it or something like that. And this thing would just like fire a crap ton of them all over the place. It was just like a big old volley of arrows. And they would put a bunch of them on there and they would just cover the sky in arrows, and, you know, they're going and setting up for anti-gun warfare, so they're basically going for harder plates instead of more covering plates. So let's see, how do you even put that? Like, if you want to deflect a bullet, you get like a lamellar plate or something like that, it has a pretty decent chance of blocking the thing, or, you know, at least not going through. Whereas if you get lighter armor that's covering more area, it's going to do a much better job of protecting against arrows, because they don't have a whole lot of mass, they don't really have a whole lot of penetration, all things considered. So as long as, like, for example, something like mail, at a reasonable range that somebody would probably be firing from, they probably will not need to worry about arrows. Like, unless it hits them in the neck or some other unarmored area, which is usually what ended up happening, they didn't really need to worry about it nearly as much. But then, yeah, if you're dealing with guns, you get harder, more rigid plates that have some kind of concussive resistance to them, which is what the deal was with the lamellar there, and they'd be able to just deflect against those, but, you know, there were more gaps for other stuff to get through. Hang on, gotta read the thing here. Yeah, huge strength wasn't castle creation. Oh yeah, that's true. Man, old-timey castles were nuts. Actually, speaking of castles, like, probably one of the most nuts stories, one of my favorite historical stories is Yi Sun-shin, the Korean general there, speaking of castles, since a lot of his job was going and fixing up castles. They're like, yeah, go fix up these little... Well, I guess they were more coastal forts than castles, but whatever. Like, yeah, you know, go fix up these forts, go train all our peoples, go save the country for, like, the 6th time in a row. And he, you know, the guy goes, and he's like, he goes and he reassembles an army, trains them from random peasants or whatever. Goes and sets up all their fortifications, builds up a navy. You know, friggin' saves their country from friggin' Japan again and again and again. And then, as soon as he's done, they're like, no, no, no! The politicians, we did it! It was all us! Screw this guy! And then they demote him over and over again. And, yeah, the poor bastard literally goes through this whole demotion and climbing back up through the ranks, proving that he's a friggin' hero among heroes there, like, 4 or 5 times before... And literally, in 2 of those cases, he was the only standing army left. Like, he brought in China to help, but... It was just this case where he was just there. Like, he was the head of the army, he was the only one left, he was going and winning fights without even losing people, or boats, or anything like that. I think his best one was, like, he took a couple people that were injured by random shrapnel, but he took out, like, 50 boats or something. Every fight this guy got into was insane, and yeah, no, they keep doing that again and again and again and again. And what was the title? They had a statue with him, like, I think they called him, the Admiral of Loyalty now? Something like that? Because he just literally kept doing this crap again and again and again. Poor bastard. Alright. But yeah. You know, because obviously he knew he was a protagonist, because then he ends up getting killed off at the very last battle of the Korean War. Like the one that finally decided it, where they go and just crush Japan's navy entirely. And yeah, his whole strategy there was like luring people into all kinds of water conditions and stuff that they weren't expecting, like, you know, currents driving people into rocks, and he would just lead a bunch of ships into there. And the funny part is, he wasn't even trained as an admiral, he just kind of fell into that role, and he just really liked studying currents for some reason. So, but yeah, read about the guy. It's Admiral Yi Sun Shin. It's like there's an argument between him and a French guy whose name escapes me at the moment as the quote-unquote best admirals of all time. But it's nuts. Actually, my wife got mad at me when we were watching the Olympics, because I got really hyped up with the fact that they had turtle boats in the intro. Let's see, bulletproof armor was hard steel cracked, soft steel dissipated. So yeah, they had a hard time making the stuff. But to be fair, muskets at least had a lower velocity. So there we go. If you wanted to know gunners versus those guys, there you go. It wasn't actually as long of a battle as I expected. Yeah, let's see how archers do against them, out of curiosity. They apparently did not give these guys the right stuff. Alright, do this crap. Now, you know what? No, we're gonna do the castle map, because this is gonna be an outright slaughter. Nope, don't save it. Alright, so final battle then, House Dodaro versus the Archers. Last test, so it seems like gunners, by and large, are coming out on top. If the Archers are... if the Archers are able to pull this off, it might be a little bit more even. Now, the reason I'm saying that this is fair and the other one wasn't, so... because they're a melee unit, they have absolutely no options whatsoever for dealing with the terrain disadvantage here. And actually, you know what? Let me... hang on, I messed it up here. Let's turn this back on so we stop getting those visual glitches. Okay, there we go. But yeah, ancient armor design is a fun thing. Like, you see all kinds of weird arguments break out between... you get some folks that are like the hardcore military folks, and you get some that are crazy into all the LARP stuff that completely misunderstand things. You get some that are so into D&D that they don't seem to understand that it's not accurate. You get some folks that are just into movies so much that they literally think arrows go through metal. It's amazing to see the kinds of stuff that breaks out. I really love that there's this interest lately in historical relative accuracy, more or less. Like, it's obviously not going to be perfect. It's hard to say what's perfect because it's a whole lot of, you know, this may help in this situation kind of stuff. Like, I guess less so on the armor component, more so on the weapon component. There was this thing that kept going back and forth where it's kind of an amazing story of the misunderstanding of swords and edges, which, weirdly enough, I'd like to say starts with Roosevelt. So... okay, so way back when, apparently Roosevelt really liked the book of this guy. I think it was called The Way of the Samurai, something like that. But this guy comes from Japan, and basically the guy gets fired from whatever job he was doing at the time. Like, man, I really want to write about some friggin' samurais or something. And so he moves over to California, and he writes a book. And it's like, you know, here's all this, you know, ancient lore and cool crap that we did. And so, apparently, Roosevelt really liked this book. And a lot of people read it, and they're like, I guess this is historically accurate or whatever. So I guess samurais were all, like, cutting people completely in half, and their swords can cut through anything, and they're all super honorable and crap, and we should learn from them. And so, all that stuff gets going, and then, obviously, people want to cash in on that. So over time, more and more myths start coming up, and then you finally get all the... you know, it was kind of a background thing that was like, hey, you know, that's kind of cool information. Then you get the anime craze coming in to a bunch of people that are just growing up. It's like, oh man, all their swords can cut through everything, and they got ninjas with superpowers and stuff, and yeah, so you get all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so then, you know, then over time it ends up overcorrecting, because then people start looking into it, and they're like, oh no, it was it was bad, bad metal that they had, and maybe it really wasn't as good, and maybe it was actually really bad, and then it would overcorrect it in that direction. And then finally, recently, it's funny, because every time it comes up as a discussion in one of these historical communities, it's like endless background context for everything. Of like, they didn't have very good metal, but they did some pretty friggin' legendarily amazing stuff with it. Like, they came up with really cool designs to make up for their resources, whereas, in Europe they were coming up with all kinds of more efficient designs because they had the resources to do it. So it literally just all boils down to everybody tried super hard with what they had on hand, and they did a good job in all cases. With some exceptions. Like, I will say the only time I've seen where, okay, there's a few cases I've seen where the whole resource and creativity thing kind of took a weird turn. So best example, if you've ever heard of the Urumi. It sounds Japanese or something, it isn't. It's actually an Indian weapon, which I've actually asked Rakes to put into the game as one of the whips. So, if you've wondered about the chain swords and stuff like that, it's not exactly a chain sword, but it's the closest thing that we ever historically got to it. So, it was basically this thing where, in India, the weather is not exactly ideal for wearing a lot of heavy armor. So, you really do not want to wear heavy crap over there. It's a pretty unideal climate. It's kind of muggy from what I understand. So there was this martial art that came out that was basically a buckler and or dual wielding things that were basically like a bunch of really flexible swords on a pole. Or like a handle or whatever else, and it was just like this weird whip blade type situation. It's hard to explain, but it's like if you think like a really, 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 really flexible chunk of steel or something, right? And you're just waving that thing around, but then you put blades on it, and yeah, there you go. That's the friggin' Urumi. And there were martial artists and stuff who would go and put like 16 blades on a single handle and dual wield these things. It's like, what happened? What drug-induced nightmare did these things come from? It's such a weird weapon. And yeah, to this day, people still practice with those things, though honestly, it seems like a great way to hurt yourself more than actually, fight anything. Because its only practical application is if the other guy has no armor whatsoever. Because you'd think even like a helmet and mail would do a really good job of protecting against that. If somebody has a shield, you're basically screwed. I mean, that's why a lot of users of that style apparently have like this little buckler thing, because that's all you really need to make them bounce off. But seriously, it's kind of like looking at this thing for the first time, it made me think it was like the Indian version of like the drunken redneck nightmare that often ends up coming up on the news every now and then. It's like, oh man, I'm gonna stick like 15 shotguns together and duct tape them to the front of my truck and go to a monster truck rally. It's like, what? Why? Why do we have a bunch of shotguns attached to a string, attached to a monster truck, and then they're just like shotgun jousting? I don't know. It was a weird weapon. So that's fun. But then you had other stuff where, stuff a bunch of Indian tribes would come up with. There's one that the Mayans loved to use. There was this, like, wooden, kind of like croquet paddle looking thing with a bunch of shark teeth in it, which apparently was a lot better than you'd think. Because it was, apparently the Spanish were kind of afraid of the thing, despite the fact that they actually had proper armor and everything. I mean, it wasn't complete armor, but still, they had pretty solid vests, they had pretty solid helmets. By and large, they were pretty well protected, and I really doubt shark teeth would get through steel, but hey, you never know. Yeah, a lot of things are based off interpretive artwork. Very true. Very true. Like, it's kind of a shame that stuff, actually, Chakanu crossbows, right? Kind of a shame that those things weren't represented more. Because that sounds like it would have been a really cool idea up until somebody figured out that armor worked. But they had these repeating crossbows that were apparently poisoned with like a little poison tip on the end of their bolts. Had like a 14 bolt capacity or something like that. And they would just like sit there rapid firing these things, hoping to find some gap in the armor at some point and just poison someone. Which, solid idea. Probably, definitely, no, it absolutely falls under the category of war crimes, but hey, they didn't have those yet. So, yeah. And then again, that being said, the Terror Knights in this game are basically just a friggin' walking war crime if you think about it. I mean, they're going electrocuting people, poisoning them, friggin' sticking them to the ground and whatever else. And otherwise scaring people. See, the Makaweedle? Oh yeah, those were those, Oh yeah, that's right, they did use obsidian chunks instead of shark teeth sometimes. Actually, I think that might have been the majority thing. Was it, True. Yeah, that's what it was. It was either obsidian or shark teeth that they shoved in those things, and yeah, the obsidian would basically completely tear somebody up if it ever actually managed to get to them. I have no idea how you pronounce that. I think Makuhil is how you pronounce that. I really wish some of those groups had become major players in the world or something, because I'd love to see somebody going and being completely confused as their GPS friggin' self-destructs trying to pronounce the street names. Yeah, go take a left on Mukohai's Waffle Street, you know? It'd be pretty amazing. But, oh well. Unfortunately, most of the surviving Indian groups, not doing so hot. The example I'm most familiar with is Navajo Nation, because I used to live down there. It's like, if you imagine Fallout, it's basically that. I mean, like, there's people still now getting telephone lines, like, as an actual thing that takes doing. It's basically a big, depressing desert with a bunch of abandoned houses all over the place, because somebody had the bright idea of saying, hey, if you ever want to move and build a new house, we'll cover it for you, but house repairs are not covered. And they just kind of assumed people would have right of ownership going on and would just stay in one spot. But instead, that just resulted to a lot of people moving back and forth all over the place. So it's like this big old chunk of desert, mostly funded by casinos, that has no idea how to run itself, and by and large still runs into a lot of problems that would seem almost third world, quite frankly. But yeah. Oh, poison was used on all China's crossbows? I actually did not know that, but that makes a lot of sense, because, man, they love their messed up stuff. Like, I don't know how they ever convinced anyone to be an architect over there. It's like, all the time, they're like, oh, come do this big public work project, and then they do, and then, like, they're freaking blinded and have their hands cut off. Like, yeah, maybe that didn't work out for a long-term career. But I guess if their family was covered for life or something like that, I guess there's that. Or the ones that ended up getting friggin' entombed in their own creations, because, I don't know, China was really good at just doing horrible things. They did so much cool crap, and then, like, when it came to treating individuals like anything that was not sub-garbage, not so good on that one. Although, actually, speaking of stuff surviving really well, have you ever seen the picture or seen any, like, evaluations of that one ridiculously old sword that survived from there? Like, there's this really cool-looking sword from some emperor or something, and it just basically got buried in a landslide or something. Like, his tomb got completely just vacuum-sealed somehow. Oh yeah, and the thing was, oh yeah, high emphasis of collective compared to individual, true. But yeah, there was this cool one that was, but yeah, this sword, it had some damage to the handle. Yeah, Sword of Guyan, that one. That thing is amazing. It's like this golden blade with all these, like, diamond things on it. Got a bunch of gems built into it all over the place, and it's just the shiniest thing you've ever seen. Man, just look up that thing. It's so cool. It's the coolest. Wanted that in everything as soon as I saw it. And yeah, it survived impeccably for like 2,000 years because it was in a really good vacuum-sealed sheath, in a really lucky vacuum-sealed tomb of sorts. Like, other than yeah, the grip being a little bit iffy, it was perfectly preserved. Sword of the King of Wu, apparently. People were very mildly excited about that place, it would seem. Where do you live? Woo! Aw, I just probably angered anyone who would be Chinese looking at this. Actually, I have not seen anyone from China in any of these things. Wouldn't be surprised. At all. Let's see, also had chromium, which helped. Yeah, true. Like, we discovered crazy rare elements. Actually, speaking of discovering crazy rare elements, how nuts must it have been for people being invaded by Vikings? They're like, we've achieved the pinnacle of human technology, and then just like this random guy shows up like, yeah, no, we have this way cooler crap from India. Sorry, now we're gonna go ahead and take all your gold. Like, no, but it's supposed to be protected by the Jeebus right now. You can't take our gold. And they're like, no, we're gonna take it though. What's religion? And yeah, then they did. It's weird because in context, Lindisfarne should have been really expected. It's like, let's put all our really expensive stuff here, and then completely not look after it whatsoever, and just assume our religion's gonna take care of that, and just nobody's gonna mess with religious sites. Yeah, that didn't work out so hot for them, and then they just were like, well, we can't do anything about actually beating these guys, so, I guess we're just gonna go ahead and, say they were demons. Yep, that does it. That's gonna pan out. And, it didn't. I mean, granted, eventually, you know, Vikings pretty much died out for a whole lot of different reasons, but still, they lasted a really long time. And yeah, they did get lucky. Although they did, they also were really, really good at navigating, too. And yeah, it's true. Their tactics were all about ambushes. They were fantastic at ambushes. Like, I don't know if it was necessarily luck, because in that case they were some of the luckiest people of all time, but they were just really good at outmaneuvering others, and a lot of armies in Europe at the time were just kind of used to, you know, I'm gonna just go fight you now. So they were used to sieges and stuff like that and fighting bigger armies, but when it came to a lot of ground fights and stuff like that, because of the general, you know, fragmentation of a lot of Europe, they didn't really have as many tricky things come out until later. I mean, granted, tactics evolved to be pretty insanely in-depth over time, but when it was just some like random local lord or whatever that just got the job because his dad had it, it wasn't necessarily going to be the best at it. Like, especially if it was some out-of-the-way little country that, you know, didn't exactly know very much. They were going to have problems. I mean, as stuff became more unified, obviously it changed. They had luck in the sense that their boats were amazing. Nobody could go in and attack villagers. Yeah, they built the perfect boats for that sort of thing. And allegedly, they had some sort of way of navigating with crystals in the dark that other people couldn't use, so they were able to navigate on cloudy days. I don't remember. I think they did find out how that worked, but I don't remember at the moment. I think it was just something along the lines of, you know, some radiant light would still get through. They were able to roughly tell what direction the moon was in. Something like that. I'm not sure. But yeah, it was kind of a weird logistical problem at the time that they didn't really know. And yeah, you know what? I guess it's fair to say that the Terranites, even with all their armor, with enough fire, do eventually die here. So yeah. Yeah, that'll be all the... Once this fight ends, though, which it's about to, that'll be all the time that I have for today. But hopefully, you know, in time, can make this like a weekly thing or something, because I'd really like to. So, hopefully you guys had fun, and yeah, just let me know if there's stuff that you want to see fight other stuff, whether you want to, you know, see fights from other groups or whatever. There's still a few that I haven't put together yet. For example, Chrono Trigger versus Chrono Cross. I'm still working on that one because I'm really unfamiliar with Chrono Cross, and to a lesser extent Chrono Trigger, so that's taken a minute to put together. I still got Resident Evil going and fighting Nibith. I still got, what's it, I was asked to do the 4 warriors from Final Fantasy in a couple different iterations. There were some others too. Was it... I think it was Angel Knights versus Fairies or something like that, which that one will take a hot minute because that takes a pretty reasonably long time to set up. Let's see. Battle of Meldon, they got really lucky because someone betrayed Bryneth and stole his horse, making their entire army think that their lord abandoned them. Okay, that is hilariously lucky. Oh man, that's kind of like, oh man, that's kind of like that one time that there was a siege between, England was besieging France. And they had a fortress. They had this castle that nobody could take. It was impeccably built. King dies. New king takes over. New king really, really, really wants a crapper built into his castle, and he does. And then immediately afterwards, one of the English spies just, like, crawls up through the friggin' toilet and kills him. It's just, like... it's just amazing, you know? It's like, I think they were stuck there for, like, a couple years or something trying to take the stupid castle, and the war would not end because of it. And then it ends because some guy really wants to take a dump in peace. It was beautiful. But yeah. So, like I was saying, that'll be the end of that one, you know. I'm not sure how the schedule will work out, but I would really like to make this a weekly thing. So, hopefully, roughly, sort of around this time. But, thank you for tuning in, and, yeah, have a good one.